permission to speak. Shadows hide you. I am listening. Our paths converge.
So good to see you.
Hail to you. Never lose hope.
Here, Fred Shadows.
I hear you. It has only begun. Fight on, Fred!
Welcome to episode 448 of Concede, our own podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. It is Friday, May 24th, 2024 in the evening. Coming to you from Nomergon, Ohio, it's me, Edelweiss. From Northrend, Massachusetts, we have WickedGood.
Hi.
And unfortunately, we do not have Magesa joining us today. She is out with COVID, and as the two of us have already experienced that ordeal, we know how exhausting it can be. You think you can handle things, and then you just can't.
Yeah. But we do hope that she gets better quickly. It sounds like she's on the mend, but also we don't want to push her. We don't want her to push herself.
Yeah.
And because that's the surest way to end up back into like a relapse.
Uh-huh.
So we're just having her take it easy, but I am fairly confident she will be back with us next week, and she sends her love to all of you. But yeah, it's just going to be the two of us, like in that weird time about a year ago between what Hat left and Magesa joined us, where it was just us and a parade of special guests, except no special guest this time, just you and me.
Yeah. But from all around the world, we have you, dear listeners. So thank you, as always, for your reviews. And if you would like to support the show but cannot do so monetarily, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on your podcast feed of choice. It always helps other people find the show. So, Life and Ladder, I have tanked my rank so bad.
Oh, same.
I think both of us, yeah.
Yeah.
I did it with a variety of things, but honestly, the thing that had been going well for me, just suddenly, I couldn't get wins with it, and that was Spell Mage. I think I just was seeing a string of warriors or other things running the untargetable Ziliax, which is just brutal for that deck to deal with. Like, it got to the point where I'm just like, if it's slower matchup and I can save, if I can remove things without using the new 2-mana spell from the mini set, that's like your best answer to the Ziliax, because it just does 6 damage split. So particularly like the second half where you can pop the shield and kill it at the same time. But otherwise, that thing's just a nightmare to clear. So, while I had been doing okay, even sometimes killing warriors with Infinite Ties of Maxitude, I don't know, I just wasn't feeling it anymore. And then tried playing my own slow decks, and that just meant that the games were even longer. And was not necessarily winning more. So that didn't feel good. For a minute, I was like, oh man, this weird Reno mage I made is actually doing well, but it was just variance. I balanced out on win rate on that. So I found some Clark decks that I'm going to try, because, that always that always goes well. I got nothing to lose at this point.
Yeah.
And, he's got a big paladin and a not Oaken Summons based Aulonius deck that look interesting. I also might pick up this Overheal Priest, but I'm not really great at those style decks.
I played one game and deleted the deck.
Yeah, okay.
I'll let Magesa take the hit on that one. I tried it, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, and I have no confidence of to be able to figure it out.
Yeah, I know what to do in theory, but once things start getting like a little bit awkward, I don't. Whereas Druid, I can navigate that a little better, right? It's a bit more straightforward for me. And the big paladin is right up my alley. So honestly, that'll probably end up being the one that does best for me. So
I've heard people in the Discord saying that that's like legitimately good. So I'm interested in how your experiences are, because I'm in the same boat. I'm just looking for any port and storm at this point. So
I mean, it seems set up so that Pipsy Painthoof is actually a good card, which I'm here for that. And one thing I've always appreciated about, sort of big paladin or decks running tiers generally is that like tiers can revive Amitus. And that always is nice because then you get to draw your like 2/2 versions of things that have death rattles or other stuff. Like the draw on Amitus is just so strong. And every once in a while you like resurrect a Kangor and have a Kangor in hand and just do the infinite Kangor dance if they've already played Reno. So that's always fun.
Yeah. I'll have to give that a try because I'm just absolutely in the same boat. So I of course, because I'm me, play Reno Priest for a while, and it worked okay until it didn't. I did have one glorious game at the end of my stream on Friday, or maybe it was Monday, where I was playing against a Highlander Warrior, which is a terrible matchup. Like they just have infinite value, and then they get double boom boss and they kill you. And they have just more value than you do because they get to destroy 6 cards out of your deck. It's just it's Baron's Priest versus Ticketus Warlock all over again.
Yep.
So I played an Amanthul, and Amanthul gave me Gunslinger Kurtrus.
Excellent.
And so I played Gunslinger Kurtrus, and it killed something insignificant. But I also had a Power Chord Synchronize. So I Power Chord Synchronized, and then I played it again, and Boom Boss went away, and I said, okay, this is a winnable matchup now.
Yep.
And it sure was. And I, to this day, do not understand, because I definitely like grazed the Boom Boss with the first Kurtrus, right? So like, why would you not just play it? Like they hadn't found Bran yet, right? So like, obviously it's only 3 bombs, but 3 bombs in that matchup is still better than 0 bombs. And they, instead of whatever, I mean, maybe they felt like they needed to deal with the Amanthul instead of just getting the Boom Boss out of their hand. But that was like that. I mean, that matchup just feels almost unwinnable. And like, okay, that's the one. Like, okay, if I could generate enough nonsense, then maybe I can make it happen. But I also had a game in that stream where I died to 13 before my turn started from plagues, which I was very displeased about. They had played a Frozen Over, and I had like a whole bunch of cards in my deck, and I just drew like 5 or 6 plagues in a row on the first one, and then enough on the second one. And I was like, okay, well, I'm glad I got to play that game. That was a good use of my time. But
yeah, I definitely get really annoyed when it's like they've only played Helya, or like maybe they played 1 down with the ship, and you just start drawing plagues with 20 cards in your deck or whatever. It's like, what's happening here?
like I want to message Hat and say, could you check the randomizer on the deck to make sure it's working? It's not just like putting them all at the top. Like, can we check that? But after that, I got it in my head that I saw people posting high finishes, or not high finishes, but high ranks with Odin Warrior.
Yep.
If you think Ziliax is bad into Spell Mage, it's real bad into Odin Warrior. It's real obnoxious, because if you don't still have like your aftershocks, then it's just not going away, and you're throwing all this armor away to get rid of this thing that's actually healing them. And that's no fun. So that was not something that I was enjoying. And I tried some other stuff. Nothing really worked. I eventually went down as far as like 10K. And then I ended up just picking up the Spell Mage after the nerfs. And that seemed to work at least okay. Like, I still feel like I'm losing to the same stuff. Like I'm still losing to like double Molten Giant, or just like big hand buff Paladin bodies that I just can't deal with when I can't get enough damage through, and I can't get the light shows to hit face. But it's not every game, and if you're skilled at drawing the keyboard, then you can pull some of those games out early before they can get going. But Yeah, that's been not my favorite, but other than that, I have, I'm not sure if Commander has turned into a special interest or a midlife crisis or both. but, but, but I ended up buying, I ended up selling a bunch of my, I went through, I said last week I was going through and finding a whole bunch of like cards that are potentially worth something. So I ended up selling like 8 commons for $26 to the card store that I go to. And he wasn't interested in anything else I had, but he was like, "Oh, I'll take 4 Pyroblasts and 4 Mystic Remoras," and gave me $26 in credit. So I bought a second precon, and I accidentally built Big Priest in Commander, which I mean is extremely on brand for me. And when Matt, I don't know if it was Matt at Arms who pointed it out, or someone else in that pod who pointed out that that I was playing Big Priest, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I sure am playing Big Priest, because I'm playing a Reanimator deck that pulls these big things out of my graveyard and puts them back." And I had the game that I played the other night ended spectacularly because I have a card that basically kills everything on the board and resurrects everything that was in the graveyards all at the same time.
Living Death?
Living Death, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was not paying attention to the fact that one of the other players was milling most of the game. And there were not enough Ashen Riders on the planet in order to remove all of the gigantic things that they had. But I'm having a lot of fun with it. And it's getting me out of the house, which is a nice thing. I wouldn't have said this last week. So I actually like played in person last week for the first time, which is
Nice.
yeah. So I found a really good local shop, which is really great. And they had some of the shops that I was trying to go to, like they were just very noisy, like when you get a lot of people there, because it's just like, there's small spaces and they're, how Magic players are when they get together in groups. This place has very tall ceilings, so it wasn't as much of a sensory thing for me. And the vibe was just very chill. And so I'm trying to make that like actually like getting out of the house on the weekends part of my regular routine, because that's been something I've been just kind of struggling with, is that I've been so exhausted on the weekends that I just don't do anything on the weekend and feel like I'm just kind of like a hermit to some extent. So I've been taking the opportunity to like get out of the house and like meet people. And I don't know that I'm not expecting to make any best friends out of this or anything, but like just being able to get out of the house and do something that's not just like sitting in front of a screen has been kind of a nice change of pace.
And you never know. Sometimes you do. I met Necra from, Hearthstone locals in Philadelphia. So,
yeah,
it happens.
Yeah, it does. So
I think she's actually in Boston now.
She is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We haven't connected, but yeah, she's living up in Boston. I mean, when she's here, she's usually flying around to parts unknown covering esports events.
Yeah.
But when she's not doing that, then she's, living here. So
where in the world is Necra? Yeah.
Except instead of a fedora, there's just a pink shock of hair. So
our audience gets that reference, right? I hope so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I am of a certain age, so I definitely do, but I don't, all the young kids these days, may not have gotten an atlas with their video games when they bought them.
People may notice we're not focusing as much on Hearthstone right now because we've tanked, and I don't know about you, I don't love the current meta. Yeah. It's not great. We did a sort of neutral Decksplanations because we were going to talk about Spell Mage, and then I was like, maybe not.
Maybe let's not do that. Yeah. So,
which might have just been an outlier, my experience, but I kind of feel like after the balance changes, which made some of the aggressive decks that could beat slower decks worse, did they? Things are pretty slow.
I don't know how slow they are, because I feel like I'm still dying to the same things. But
you're still dying to Pain Lock?
Yeah.
I haven't seen a Pain Lock, but maybe that's just
you come down to my level, you'll see them.
I mean, Pain Lock was the real amazing matchup as the mage, right? It's just like, oh, you're at 8? Okay, you're dead. Like,
well, sometimes, and then if they don't have Infernal on time, right? Because then typically if you don't have enough burn and then they Infernal, then sometimes you can't get there because again, the light shows aren't ever hitting face because there's just too many butts on the board.
yeah,
So.
I mean, I tended to like keep Molten Rune.
Yeah.
And usually it was like they couldn't Infernal in the same turn as the tons of Molten Giants, right? So unless they were playing exceptionally carefully, I tended to get them. But with both the mage and the shaman, which I still like that shaman, but yeah, it's trickier into present meta. Yeah, the other thing that's been taking up my time is I'm still chugging away reading the Descent into Avernus adventure because I'm going to be DMing in like a couple of months for my first time being a DM.
That's exciting. So you also are going to get to leave the house to play games.
Well, I'm not going to leave the house. I'm going to be here in my basement putting different things onto the soundboard. And
oh, okay. You're doing it online. Okay.
Yeah,
well, you're virtually leaving the house.
Yeah. I mean, the group is like across the different parts of the country. Yeah. But Descent into Avernus, for those unfamiliar, is an adventure that is basically Baldur's Gate 2.5. Like the events that transpire happen immediately before Baldur's Gate 3, and the idea is this rival city called Elturel gets pulled into the first layer of hell of Avernus, and the party has to figure out a way to get it back. So it's long. It goes from level 1 to 13. So I'm looking up the Alexandrian remixing of Avernus, and which gives advice on things to do better, because by the book stuff from Wizards is not always great. And then I'm making some changes of my own to sort of speed things up, cut out unnecessary random encounters, kind of things. It should be fun. Yeah, we have gone around. I have a sense of what everyone's playing, except for one of the characters that I haven't, or one of the group that I haven't heard from yet. We'll see how frequent the sessions end up, because 2 of the group are like having kids this year. So,
oh yeah, good luck with that. Yeah,
one of whom is having twins.
Yeah,
that's why we're not going back to his campaign.
I mean, it depends. I mean, they're just not going to sleep ever, so they should be fine. You know?
Yeah. I mean, that's how I racked up hundreds of hours on Baldur's Gate 3 in the first place, was having a newborn.
That was how I ended up with $400 worth of Rock Band DLC, was having twins. So because they were giving away codes to Rock Band DLC underneath Pepsi caps right around then, and I was chugging anything that had caffeine that I could get my hands on. So yeah, that was a time.
I'm not sure if I can even finish the remainder of the energy drink seltzer I had gotten, because it was like, I can't be chugging Red Bull all the time. So yeah, it was not delicious, but it was effective. Anyway.
Ooh, there's a card called Descend from Avernus that would work in my Big Priest deck. Returns all creatures and planeswalkers from my graveyard to the battlefield. That sounds good. I need to look at I actually looked at Karlak to see if that was a deck I could build, but she's mono red, and I'm not doing a mono red deck ever.
I have not checked out the card versions of these characters. But before we devolve into strictly non-Hearthstone games, we should probably,
this is not Blizzlet after all.
Yeah,
so
we should probably talk about the bit of news that we have.
Well, I mean, it's kind of big news. There's actually quite a bit of news that we want to talk about. So let's go get into that.
Gadgets and Gazette always gets the scoop.
Yeah, so we did get patch 29.4.2 on Thursday, which was yesterday as we were recording this, which is also one of the reasons that we are recording on Friday, because we kind of looked at it and said we need a day to figure out what's going on and talk about this intelligently. There is one thing at the top of the patch notes that we will get to in a second, but I want to start with the balance changes because we've already kind of alluded to them. So we did get 3 cards that were changed in standard. And the dev comment is that it's early after the launch of the Dr. Boom's Incredible Inventions mini set, and the metagame is still developing, so we're making just a few balance adjustments in this patch aimed at addressing early outlier decks. All 3 of the target decks are a little too good at flooding the board too early and too efficiently. The Molten Giant change slows Warlock down slightly and also makes the play pattern a bit more dangerous, allowing more room for a counterswing. Showdown is an enable for Ziliac, Sea Giant, and Prismatic Beam and Paladin, so we think it could be less efficient for that deck. Finally, Thirsty Drifter is another strong swarming card, particularly at higher levels of play, and our data indicates the deck would likely trend upwards if we didn't adjust it here too. So the changes that we got in this patch are Showdown went from 2 mana to 3 mana, Thirsty Drifter went from 6 mana to 7 mana, and Molten Giant went from 20 mana to 22 mana, which means that you need to be now at 8 life to play it for free instead of 10, which is this. They keep kind of yo-yoing with Molten Giant's cost because it started at 20 and then it went to 25 for a while, and now it went back to 20 and now we're up to 22, which is not as much as 25, but which basically killed the card. But you could argue whether how, depending on where you're playing, I still see plenty of it and it seems fine. But also sometimes you just don't have the Infernal to be able to heal up, or you can't get it down in the turn that you're playing all of the Celestial Projectionists or whatever, that's really when you get blown out by it. When it's one Molten Giant, it's fine. It's when it's Molten Giant, Celestial Projectionist, Molten Giant, Celestial Projectionist, Molten Giant, that's very hard to deal with. And I found that even as a Reno Priest, like, I had to hard mulligan for Shadowward Ruin against Warlock, because if you don't, even putting in an ETC sometimes was too slow because they would just get that out on 4.
Yeah.
So
it was definitely the most recent biggest outlier of non-games, right? It was just big board on turn 4 or 5. And if you didn't kill them that turn, they either killed you or healed. So yeah, it was very awkward. And I'm glad that they didn't go the full 25 mana on Molten Giant, because we've had that and we know that it's a dead card.
Yeah. So, and I don't know how much the Thirsty Drifter change is going to hurt Zarimi Priest in the end. I've been hearing rumors that the rumors of its death are like over exaggerated. It doesn't seem like anything really makes that deck less good than it already is, unless you're going to start addressing maybe Gift Wrap Whelp. That might be the card that or Chirurgeon, one or the other, that feels like those are the cards that are making it go in the early game. And Drifter is nice to get down early, but I've had plenty of games when I played that deck that I didn't care if I could get a Thirsty Drifter down, because just the other minions that were on the board were good enough. I mean, Thirsty Drifter is a very good card. I don't know that it's necessarily the thing that's holding up Zarimi Priest. I mean, it certainly is going to slow it down a little bit, and maybe to the point where you're not able to like power chord synchronize it or get it down with Pip early enough, whatever. That's valid, but it's probably still fine, I would say.
I think it's just, again, all 3 of these cards are cards that enable situations of just massive board swing non-games, right? Whether it's Molten Giant with Celestial Projectionist, Thirsty Drifter with Projectionist, or Synchronize, right? Those times where it's like, oh god, they have 2, oh god, they have 3 drifters, right? Particularly with Synchronize, where they're 5 8s, right? Like, that's a lot of beef on board with 2 5 8s, protecting some of the other cards that are in play. So, and then with Showdown, sorry, we have here written in the notes 3 mana to 4 mana. It went from 2 mana to 3 mana.
2 mana, 3 mana. Yeah, that must have been wishful thinking on my part.
Yeah, Showdown, 2 mana 6 minions in play, like that's just
Yeah.
such an insane enabler with ticking Ziliax specifically, right? Where, you know, you get the ticking pylon Ziliax down extremely cheaply, right? Assuming you have any minions in play yourself or your opponent has any minions in play, then you've got a free Ziliax to then make your showdown minions trade over theirs. And, you know, I've had games where I was keeping a paladin in check board-wise, like the whole game, and then they just set up a Crusader aura, and I was like, oh no. Oh no, here we go.
Well, here we go.
and like, you know, the showdown play happens, and I just, you know, double Sea Giant.
Yeah.
What do I do? And so just, even if these things still happen, if they're just like a little bit worse, a little more awkward, right? Like they already had hit Prismatic Beam, you know, in multiple ways. So making that combination just a little bit worse again on the showdown side of things, I'm here for it. And I'm glad these aren't killing decks, right? The whole reason, like, whole reason I would have been sad to see Molten Giant go to 25 is because it was really cool to have it back. And it's fun to see Molten Giant like back to being played. And if it was 25 mana again, I mean, one, I just feel like you know what's gonna happen, right? It was 25 before it came back into core.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I guess the one thing that I'm a little, and maybe if this ultimately is like, you know, first day of the new meta blues where people are still trying the things to see if they're actually bad or not. I guess what I worry about with Painlock specifically is like that doesn't feel like it's a deck that is going to get outclassed in a 5-set meta, right? Like that kind of play pattern, unless we get some really good hard, like mass hard removal that's cheap, like Shadowward Ruin-esque, like more of that. Like that many 8/8s on 5 even feels like it's going to be hard for a 5-set meta to compete with that, which is where my kind of concern has been with it, especially given, again, I don't want to hold the agency patch against them, right? Because I think that they're doing their best and they're trying to they're trying to make things better, but then it feels like that was kind of undercut by the mini set a little bit, in that we then gave both another really powerful self-damage card to Warlock in the form of in the form of the draw card, malfunction, yeah, what the hell's the name of it now? Mass production. I just know it has hit them in the face and draw a lot in mass production, and then also giving them Infernal to be able to heal back up, right? So
yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of all the more reason to have, you know, preemptively scaled back, right? Because you know that more powerful cards are going to come out, because that's what happens when you you add more cards to the game. Yeah. So, you know, all the more reason to have scaled things back a bit, and I think it just means like things would have been even more broken.
Yeah. Yeah, like I mean, I'm not saying that it was the right thing to do. Yeah.
In Wild, mass production was silly, right?
Yeah.
Extremely, extremely silly for Quest Warlock.
I mean, the Demon Seed continues to exist.
Yeah.
And despite them nerfing that card into the ground, it is really on brand for Warlock that they keep trying to kill that card and it keeps bursting up out of the ground. Right? Like,
yeah. It's like literally deal 30 damage to yourself, which is your starting life total. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The healing is really good in Wild too. So, yeah.
So I guess time will tell to see. I mean, this is not the kind of patch where you're expecting like new decks to pop up, right? I think this is really just kind of trying to smooth out the power level, and time will tell if that does happen or not, or if these decks are just kind of fine with this, or maybe they are fine, but they're more on par with everything else, right? Because like the goal is not that these decks shouldn't exist. The goal is that these decks should be at a competitive level with the other powerful decks in the format and not be a step above them or two steps above them. So it'll be interesting to see how this does end up shaking out once we get through maybe the weekend or like early part of next week, especially because this is where the month is ending. The month ends on I guess next Friday. So there's going to be like, this is going to be the last week where people are really trying to push, particularly for Masters. Are they playing for Masters Tour spots this month or no? I forget which months they are. Which ones
I honestly don't recall because there's only 2 events besides Worlds this year.
Right. But even if they're not, even if the MMR doesn't count for this month, like the starting MMR does make a difference for that. So there's still going to be people grinding. So we'll see what happens with that. But that was one major change in this patch. And there was another major change that I think we can agree is going to have a bigger impact and a much more positive one in immediately. And before we talk about that, I have to do this.
Time is money, friend.
Once again, literally. So we got the weekly quest changes, and we also got a note from Tyler Bielman, the game director, which is something that we very rarely do hear from him. So I want to read this out before we talk about the changes, because I think that's good to hear and talk about. But what he says is, before the weekly quest changed in patch 29.2, we didn't adequately communicate the changes that were coming or our reasoning for them. That's something we'll keep improving on. Over the last few weeks, we've been listening to your experiences and looking at our data, and it's clear that the new weekly quests didn't do their job of rewarding you for your time playing the game. Going forward, we want to strike a much better balance between your time spent in Hearthstone and the rewards given by weekly quests. So we're making some more updates in this patch, reducing the requirements in the weekly quests that seem to be blocking player progression for many of you, while leaving the increased XP where it is. We hope these new changes will still reward you more while keeping weekly quests an attainable and fun goal for all players. We look forward to seeing how this iteration works out. Please keep the feedback coming. Thanks for playing, and we'll see you in the tavern. And so the changes that they made is that the ranked wins quest went from win 10 games of ranked Hearthstone to play 10 games of ranked Hearthstone, which is, especially as both of us can attest, given the changes in our ranks over the past week, is a welcome change when you're kind of stuck in the mud and you don't know what to do. You at least know that there's a finite time commitment that you're going to have to put into that. And similarly, on the Arena Tavern Brawl or Battlegrounds quest, it has gone from 10 games of Arena Tavern Brawl or Battlegrounds to play 5 games of Arena Tavern Brawl or Battlegrounds, accounting for the fact that Tavern Brawl can be very variable depending on what the actual Tavern Brawl is. Arena costs you gold to participate in, and Battlegrounds games take forever.
Yeah.
What they're doing is they're making it so that you know what your time investment is, because when it's win, that could take you an hour, that could take you a week. It's hard to tell just depending on what you're doing, and it kind of forces you into tryharding. You can go play ranked and play at the rank 5 floor with whatever jank game you want, and you will get that quest done now, which is a big difference. And also the other 2 changes that they made were to the infamous play miniaturizer mini cards quest, which has gone down from play 32 miniaturizer mini cards to play 10 miniaturizer mini cards. Thank goodness, because that was an insta reroll. Like 32 is just so many.
Like, I can see the thinking of, well, but for each one, it's kind of 2, right? Because you play the regular and then you play the mini version, and then that's
sometimes.
Yeah. Well.
But I mean, how many miniaturized cards are you typically running in a deck, right? Like it's maybe 4 at the top end, right?
Paladin has...
It's got Tigress plushie and what else?
Tarim. And
right, sometimes.
So that's on the higher end.
Yeah, that's 3 because Tarim's a legendary, right? And
yeah.
like Druid has the dragon. Does it have anything else? I don't think it does.
No.
And
the thing is that they apart from Paladin, which got a legendary miniaturize, most classes, if they got a mini, you don't get multiples, right? And I don't think any of the neutral miniaturized cards are beyond fringe playable. Maybe like the clown has seen some play.
Has it in arena? What? When is the clown been seen play?
In like warriors who want to end the games faster.
Oh God, that sounds terrible.
But yeah, I think largely the neutral miniaturized cards are not playable. There's like the 4/4 rush that if it honorable kills draws you a card that has miniaturize, and then there's the clown. I don't know if there's another one.
The clown, so the clown is Nostalgic Clown, which says if you've played a higher cost card while holding this, deal 4 damage. Right. So
with Bran, 8 damage.
Yeah. I mean, even the ones that really abused miniaturized, like Demon Hunter was just playing Window Shopper, like Rogue just plays Sandbox Scoundrel. Now they have Shadow Step and Breakdance and stuff like that, so sometimes they could probably get through. But even then, you're talking about maybe 6 in a game, right? So then that's talking about like 8 games on a, if you best case scenario, you're talking about like 8 games if you really push it, and like you're just not going to draw them every game.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a good recognition that was just like way out of line. The last change that was made was spend 750 mana. It's now gone down to spend 650 mana. So that's like a 12% reduction, roughly. That's a good number.
Yeah. Well, and again, mana is something that you don't even think about it, right? It just happens.
Yeah.
So.
Well, if you're playing Constructed, if you're playing Battlegrounds, that's a different story altogether.
Does it not count?
I mean, even if it does, right? I don't know if the gold counts as mana. I actually haven't I wouldn't even pay attention to that.
Yeah.
So maybe somebody in chat happens to know, but yeah, like it still takes a long time. Like that one, at least you will get done eventually if you just keep pressing the button. But and if you're spending your mana, which you should be. So maybe if you're a worse player and you're not spending your mana, then you won't get there as fast, and that's incentive to get better. But but I think these are all like there's nothing bad to say about these. Like unless you want to hang, if you want to hold a grudge and say they never should have happened in the first place, then fine, like so be it. But I think that changing the win quest to play in particular is a very welcome change, just because it makes it a very clear amount of time that you're going to be spending to get that quest done, and it's not going to be dependent on your win rate.
And remember, I'm pretty sure maintained the amount of XP that these give, right? Which was increased when they implemented the change. The kerfuffle was just because it wasn't increased proportionally.
Yeah.
So now that they're easier to do, you can really feel nice about hopefully feel better about the increase in experience from these quests. So
and maybe the mode specific quests aren't an instant reroll if you don't play a lot of that mode anymore, right? Like I would probably feel better about hanging on to the Battlegrounds quest if I knew I was going to play if I felt like I was going to play 5 games of Battlegrounds, right?
Yeah.
But
if I'm like, I'm going to play some duos with my brother this week, I can keep this, right? Like that kind of thing is much more manageable.
Yeah. But it's especially when you're playing a mode that you're not focusing on and having to win, like that's sometimes a tall order. And then that's one of the other reasons that would just be an instant reroll. So yeah, I think these are all good changes. I don't have anything negative to say about them. I think, I'm glad that they're listening. I think, it was worth giving them an opportunity to fix this, understanding that, this was kind of locked in when they made the changes, and then it was going to take time to tease out how to undo them, because just rolling back that change, who knows, that might have had other technical implications if they tried to do that, right?
Yeah.
Like who knows? Like I just envision the Hearthstone client as like a late stage Jenga tower.
Isn't all old code really?
Basically, But yeah, so like I don't you never know what's gonna happen if you know, like I just think of like the old Simpsons joke of that's a load bearing poster, you know.
Yeah.
There's also a bunch of Battlegrounds card changes that again we're not gonna go into because I don't think we could adequately break those down. The things that I am seeing is that Rat Pack and Little Rag are back. I think there was a known issue earlier in the week where Rat Pack wasn't actually coming back into the pool. I don't know if they fixed it or they were going to fix it. But that's something like, you know, that we can recognize. But yeah, there's a bunch of changes that I don't think we really feel qualified to talk about, but you can go into the patch notes. Most of the patch notes are Battlegrounds card changes. So you can go read all of that and understand what's there. And the only bug fix, they removed Draconian Bomber from the Putricide Hero Power pool and Battlegrounds because of some sort of an undesired interaction they didn't specify, and standardized pack wasn't showing up as new in the collection, so they fixed that. You know. So we also got some shop updates. The most important one of those is that Rabbit Phelan is a druid skin. He references rabbit holes. Hello, Squelch. Apparently those rabbit holes are or are not worth exploring.
Mm-hmm.
So that is something you could buy for $10 or 1,000 runestones. We have not yet seen Squirrel Illyria, but we know that she is coming. If Rabbit Phelan is at all, or Squirrel Illyria, I mean, we've heard some of the voice lines, but if they're at all on the level of Cat Adonis, that is worth your money. Just the fact that I get to have my WoW be "You Gotta Be Kidding Me" has been fantastic.
No. Oh gosh.
So you can enjoy that. The other shop updates that we got this week are that we got $50 or 5,000 runestone signature bundles for the One Amalgam Band and for Thelder and the Lost. So again, if you are feeling like saying, well, hello there to Hearthstone, then feel free to go get those. And House of Rituals Gul'dan Warlock skin is now available back in the shop for $6.99 USD or 700 runestones. So you can go get that if you missed out on it the first time. The other main news of this week is that the Isle of Mischievous Toys event has started. They decided again to start that quest off with play or destroy a Replicatorinator, which is a card that most people are not playing in decks. So at least this is a mini set card, so you're more likely to own it, so you could go jam games in casual until that happens. And I was blessed enough to have somebody play one of those on the first day after that quest rolled, and I made sure to destroy it so I would not have to deal with that quest anymore. But the rest of the quests seem pretty achievable once you get past that first one, and you could just ignore it and do the rest of the quests, but it does feel like kind of a big blocker when that's the first one in your way.
Yeah, I definitely think it is not as egregious as last time with the Geppetto Joy Buzz. I'm always going to say this, like, you can't expect a company to not incentivize people to spend money. Like, that's just not how it works. But I think it is a little different with this being the mini set. Most people, if they have some of the cards, they have all of the cards because they bought the mini set either with gold or money. A lot of people get the mini set with gold. It's you know, as long as you allocate 1,500 gold, I think that's what it is, right? There's not much for the non-golden mini set.
Is it I thought it was 2,000 gold, $15 USD.
That's probably what I mixed the two. Yeah, 2,000 gold. Like, yeah. You can see how often I've done that in recent memory.
I mean, you just open them in packs if you're Edelweiss, so you know.
Yeah. But tavern, heroic tavern brawl addiction. But yeah, I know someone who got the golden one with gold, with which, you know, I knew that was possible in theory, but I had not known anyone to have the restraint or ability to accrue that gold between expansions to be able to.
Well,
to
Electric Sheep said he was talking about doing that on Squelch, on the last episode of Squelch, so I assume that he's done that. Oh, he's saying that he's done that in
yeah.
chat, so.
But at any rate, so in that case, right, with mini set, much more likely to have it. I do wish my one thing where I'd be like, this totally solves it for me, is if you could dismiss it, right? If you could dismiss it, and then because there's one of those every day, right? There's a new one or something.
Yeah, but it doesn't come up if you haven't cleared the first one, or even if that just wasn't the opening one, right? Because like the rest of them are fine, and at least because like the thing that happens, especially if you never really got there with the Whizbangs one, is that you could have the feeling like, oh God, they're all going to be like this, and not bother, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't see what's behind it, right? So that's the kind of, especially if you're less engaged, you're not going to like Hearthstone top decks to look up stuff or whatever, right? Like you may just look at it and say, I'm not doing that. And I don't even care if that's what the first one is. Cause usually the first one's like the easy one, right? So if that's the first one, I can't even imagine what's behind it. I'm not even going to bother even caring about this. Right. So that's where I do think that it's worth them at least starting with something that's a little bit more achievable. And then, yeah, you could do those that are a little bit more specific after like day one, just to get people feeling like they've gotten somewhere first.
Yeah, I don't know. I am not going to hold it against them putting the incentivization for people to get the stuff at the front, right?
Yeah.
Particularly because, so I'm intentionally not playing things with Replicator and Aether to see how quickly I finish this without those quests. The answer is I don't think it'll take that long because we have 20 days, right? We have 20 days. There's still other quests that aren't those big ones that track it along, and you get some just by playing anyway. And they build them, or at least they built this event to be completable without needing to do the quests, right? But I think, it's tough when there's some inconsistency there, right? We have noticed at times where they've been experimenting, some of them that have been like harder to complete, where it did feel like you needed to do the little quests within them to some extent to complete the events. And so that kind of ambiguity event to event makes it a little more like frustrating when there is a quest that seems like it'll be challenging to complete. But anyway, for me, I think if I'm okay with them putting it first as long as it's dismissible. So that you're like, oh, I'm not going to do that. But then the next day you can still get that one and it's fine. Yeah.
I mean, I guess the through line of all this stuff has really just been like, there's a point at which the quests are too difficult and then they just stop mattering. Right. And I think that it's clearly in Blizzard's interest as much as our interest for it to feel like these things are achievable. And this is less of an issue because it's in the mini set that you can just go buy with gold. You don't need to spend money opening packs and hope that you pull one. Right. But if it feels like it's not, the juice is going to be worth the squeeze, then people are just going to bail on it. And then they're wasting their time putting the event out there. Right. So, yeah. But, I think we're getting better. I'm interested to like when we have the next expansion, it'll be interesting to see what that first event looks like. And if, they've changed course based on this. I am sure that there's been plenty of feedback that's been delivered to the team. So we'll see how they course correct from here. For all we know, this could have just been, dialed in for months, right? That's just the way that it is. So, but yeah, that's the news. So since we've been really good at learning a whole bunch of new decks, learning. So we're going to help you try to spend a little bit less time learning and a little bit more time, hopefully, winning with them. Though, I guess we'll we won't promise the latter, but at least we can help with the former.
So, yeah, how to learn a deck. This is definitely a do as I say, not as I do, because do I always do these things? No. Do I spiral into oblivion? Sometimes. But, we don't want you to do that. We want you to play your best and do your best even at times where you're going to do a little worse because you're trying something new. So obviously, step one, look at the list. It seems self-explanatory, but I definitely have rolled up and copied a code and just not looked at it at all. Gone in and been like waiting for a card I expected to be there that just wasn't, right? This particularly I find happens when it's like, it's a mainstream deck, right? That you're just like, oh yeah, I know what deck this is. And then it just so happens that the person or place that you pulled this list of that type of deck from is like not running a card you expect to be there. And you're just waiting for it. It's not there.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this one has Going Down Swinging instead of Metamorphosis. Oops. Or vice versa.
Why is it not running this card? Who built this? Like, and sometimes there are different reasons for that. Sometimes you just like, you'll get somebody who went up to rank 1 and they were targeting a very specific meta that you are not likely to see, and they had very specific like tech cards in there. Sometimes they just like they were brewing and they just don't like a card, right?
Yeah,
and
I definitely do that.
Yeah, and that card I've done that too, where I'm just like, this card is trash. I don't want to play it. I just get angry every time I play it, so I'm just not going to play it, right? And that's fine, but then you need to know when you're going in, like, why is that not there? Are there things that you should know? Like, are there weird inclusions that you need to understand why they're there? Again, are they tech cards? Are they there because there's some sort of broken combo that you haven't seen yet? It's very, especially once you get more experience with the game, it's very easy to say, oh, I know how decks work. And just load, and I'm as guilty of this as anybody, and just load into the client and then go through a couple games like, oh, I was waiting for this card that never came. So, but also, or like, I'll tell the story again. I think it comes up like once every 3 episodes now, of when we were doing theory crafting, and Magesa and I saw the Playhouse Giants list and just cut the whole Playhouse Giants package.
Which
and
was
then the deck did nothing.
The deck, right? Like, it's like, yeah, the deck is Gaslight, Gatekeeper, and Everything Must Go, and Playhouse Giants. And when you don't have those, you're not doing anything.
We didn't have a deck, and we didn't know that was the whole point for the deck, right? So because we just like looked at it like, I don't want to play those. Let's just get rid of those, right? So really just like understand why the deck is there, and sometimes it's worth looking at 2 or 3, because then that'll tell you like, hey, is this normal, right? Or should this deck have some other things? And maybe you'll find, a different list that's more refined, or that maybe the card choices speak to you a little bit better, but that also gives you a better sense of like what's core and what's like a fringe inclusion, or what's the 30th card.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when you look at HS Replay, as many people do for deck lists, I'm sure, you can go over to that tab where it shows you the different lists. It shows how many games played of those different lists there are, right? So, if you see there's a list that has a higher win percentage, but it's only got 200 games on it or something, just be aware that might be someone playing in a pocket meta, right? And that's why it's performing better, or just variance. And if you're pulling or like picking up a list from, Twitter, from an individual, Clark, Kibler, Ike, me, I mean, any of various places, right, that may be suspect. Like, if you're not sure why stuff is there, just ask. Most of us, I'm sure, will happily just write a Twitter post back. Like, doesn't take that
People
much
love
time.
talking about the decks that they've
Oh
heard,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So like it is not out of bounds if somebody's posting a really weird deck on Twitter to say, hey, what is this here for? What is this doing? They'll probably be very happy to answer you because they share the deck because they want people to play it, right?
Yeah.
So
or like, what is the mulligan? I feel like is one of the best questions you can ask that we're too lazy to just put in the tweet. So some people do it, and I know I'm always grateful when they do. That does not then make me take the time to do it, because usually, like, you're just excited, you want to make the post, you're not interested in writing a deck guide. But if someone asked me directly, yeah, I'd respond.
Yeah. And I mean, you could also ask in our Discord too, because somebody will probably know the answer. If you don't feel like, sending an @ message on Twitter or talking to the person directly, like usually somebody who's in our Discord will know why things are the way that they are and will probably be able to explain it to you in potentially more than 280 characters if that's what's necessary. So, I mean, also just kind of watching somebody streaming them is also a good way to learn the deck without risking your rank with it. If you're on HS Replay, there's a streams tab. You can just go and look and see who's streaming that deck right now that's using the HS Replay extension, and just go watch a stream and get an idea of like what you're supposed to be doing. If it's someone like No Hands Gamer, they'll probably talk through a lot of their stuff, or sometimes some people are better than others. You'll probably want to find a stream in a language that you speak. That would be helpful. But sometimes you can even glean from just like watching them play, even if you can't understand what they're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so helpful. Even if it's just to realize, oh, I can't play that deck, right? Like, if you're just watching them and you're just like, no shot.
Yeah. It's like, oh, okay, well, I'm watching Pocket Rogue play Pocket Train playing Sonya Rogue. I'm like, no, I'm out. I'm good. I don't need to play this to know what's gonna happen. I'll save myself the ranks right now.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, so that takes us into step 2. You've done these things, you figured out what you're supposed to do. You got to play your games deliberately. So you're probably going to lose some of those early games, and you just need to recognize that you're learning, focus on like less the outcome and more just getting the deck to do the thing, getting better. And particularly, I find it takes a while to learn how to win when you don't have optimal scenarios, right? Because usually if you have a sense of what the deck's trying to do, like, you know what to do in the optimal scenario because things are just lining up perfectly. It just sort of works. Where things get messy is when you don't have that perfect hand. I think the ultimate version of this, right, is the Dorian Aulonius decks that were floating around, because that's an extremely draw variance, like, dependent deck, because, well, things get different if you draw Dorian, because you can't discount Dorian the way you can discount Oaken Summons, or if you draw your your Anar or your Aulonius, like, you still can win, but it gets more complicated because you got to do things a little differently. So make sure you're learning how to win when things don't go according to plan. And if that never happens, maybe it's not the deck for you, right? Maybe it's not actually a good deck. Maybe it was just a highlight moment that they posted because it can do wacky things. I'm looking at specifically my example of the Dorian Druid, because that happens. People have weird variants and they're like, oh, I went 8-0 with this, and that sounds great, but that's not very many games. It happens. Or they just have some crazy highlight and you're like, oh, I want to do that, give me that list, and then it takes you a 1 in 10 record to actually do the thing. So
yeah. One thing that's important to realize with some of those decks too, when they're like something that you've never seen before and somebody's posting like a ridiculous win rate with it, they've got two things in their advantage. One is that they know exactly why every card is in the deck because they put all of them there,
Mhm.
right? Where you're still trying to have to figure out some of the synergies where they've already thought of those things and they know exactly why they're playing the cards they're playing. The other is that they have the element of surprise, which is gone the second they post it to Twitter. Because now a lot of people who have, maybe not everybody, but a lot of people who are paying attention, especially when you're playing at higher ranks, will have seen that and will know what to expect. So that's something just to keep in mind if you're seeing something. I generally don't like to play a deck when I've only seen one person tweeting it. I usually wait till somebody else high rank like posts a slightly adjusted version of the list, like they've refined it a tiny bit, and or even playing the exact same list and say, "Oh yeah, I also went up to like rank 1. It was no problem." Okay, if somebody else other than the person who built it can get ranks with it, then it's worth exploring. But generally, if it's one, this is a tale as old as time. Like going back to like Jackie and like Egg Druid or Token Druid back in like before rotation, before standard, right? Uh there's always been these decks that like one person built that, or like any deck that Zetalot's made ever. So like there's all these decks that one person can play and maybe nobody else can.
Yeah, absolutely. So next thing, look at the matchups, right? Again, this will be more difficult if you're taking unique lists that are not on HS Replay, but if you are doing things that are there, if there is data you can take a look at, check the matchups to see if you are expected to win certain games or not, right? If you're looking back at your matchup history and you're like, oh, I'm losing a lot to this class, is that a bad matchup actually, or am I doing something wrong? You can go back and find out, oh yeah, that's 60-40, that's oh god, 70-30. We don't have as many of those anymore, but they happen. So that's one of those things where you can then go, okay, so this has some polarized matchups. Is that something I want to be dealing with, or am I just gonna bite the bullet and say, okay, I'll like, yeah, these are gonna happen, and most things have some polarized matchups. So, yeah, always helpful if you are like starting to get frustrated at losing certain things. If you can then look back and go, oh no, it's kind of expected that I lose that matchup.
Yeah, and recency bias is a thing too. Like when you're thinking about giving up on a deck as you're getting through the learning process, like just go look at your tracker and go see if you've really lost as many games as you thought you have. Because especially like when you play into a slow deck that's grinding you out that takes 20 minutes, it can feel like you just lost 3 or 4 in a row when it's really just one loss, right? So just be aware that you can kind of a loss feels like 3 wins, equivalent to 3 wins generally. I think that was Annie Duke's book that I got that from, but that's something just to keep in mind when you're looking at it, to make sure that you're being objective when this goes for everything, but particularly when you feel like, oh, this deck isn't working. Well, no, actually I won half my games and some of these might have been winnable if I knew the matchups better, right? Because like you'll get more win percentage as you learn a deck, but the one thing that can really tank you is just switching between decks because you feel like something's not working, and you really want to make sure that that's the case. Now, if you're trying something that's out there, yeah, it might be out there and you might need to bail. Like that's valid.
Yeah.
So just, know what you're up against, but do make sure that you're doing that with eyes wide open if you do decide to bail on a deck that you've just started learning.
Yeah, I've had times where I'm like feeling terrible. I look, oh, I'm 10-4. It's just that the last 3 were losses, right? Like,
yeah.
You can be high on the day or the couple of days, even if you just had a spat of some not great matchups. And it's particularly tough when they're long matches, which I feel like right now some of the games can be quite long. That might just be somewhat because of decks I'm playing, but
well, also because of like perfect virus celiacs, right?
Yes.
Like
yeah.
That tends to elongate a lot of games also, and can make games feel longer than they really are.
Yeah, absolutely. it's I feel like that Ziliax is so effective right now just because there's not a lot of transform effects, and like you would need non-targeted transform, right?
Or Shard of the Naru. Shard of the Naru would deal with that.
Yeah, or a minion that silences, but the warrior would not be able to resurrect a bunch of them if you could get rid of the reborn. Anyway, just quick aside.
Reno deals with that sometimes. You have to be careful into Reno,
right.
But yeah.
Yes. But yeah, so then you need to keep in mind, hey, guess what? Hearthstone's a game. Games are supposed to be fun. Are you having fun?
We're gonna get sued. You can't say that. That's another show's tagline. We can't say that.
Fun is mandatory. No. Yeah. So just if you're not having fun with this new deck you're trying out, and so it's like it's something that you're also not an expert at, maybe that is a reason to switch, right? Like, because the way you're going to get good at it is by jamming a whole bunch of games. If you're not having fun, you're not going to want to jam a whole bunch of games. And I mean, I've said the times where I am decently high rank, it's because I enjoy the deck. Now, I don't know what it says about me that one of my highest ranks was with Odd Rogue, but like, yeah, those are those times when you really are enjoying a deck are when you can really push to the limits of best rank because you're having a good time and that motivates you to perform well. So now I suppose there's situations where that might not work for everyone if you having a good time is playing lots of Yogg in the boxes, but yeah, generally that I think is true.
Yeah, I mean, there's some people who are spikes for whom just like winning is fun.
Yeah,
right. Like, and that is a thing. But sometimes, like, I mean, this is like me with every Paladin deck ever. Is that I will play it. I know it's good. I know I need to learn it, and I just can't bring myself to do it. And it's like I could force myself to, but I'm not playing Conquest. I don't need this deck in my repertoire. I could just go play something else and find something else that will work. It also is a corollary to the why are you playing a control deck to climb argument?
Mm-hmm.
Because I enjoy it more. And if my win rate is better than it is with an aggro deck and I'm playing fewer mirrors, then the actual amount of time that I'm spending on ladder is not different, even if the games individually are, which they aren't always.
I need a hard aggro meta so that I can make my Holy Paladin work. There's too much value. Like, it's such a cool concept of it, with fun synergies. Actually, it uses Replicator Innator. But anyway, yeah, with the mini set minion that gets discounted by playing holy spells, I get to have my Pyro Equality clears again and Equality Consecration. Oh, it's so much nostalgia, and it's the kind of deck where it's like you don't just play the free minions because you can play them. You wait until you can play them on the same turn as you clear the opponent's board. I love those kinds of Paladin decks. Where it's just like you win because you clear the board and play a bunch of stuff. But anyway, yeah, if you are not having fun, one thing you can do is try a couple different versions of the list, right? One might feel better than others. That could be true of not just in terms of having fun, but just like win rate and stuff, right? Again, Aegis Replay, your best friend there. If you want to take a look at different versions with slight card differences, if you're not confident in making swap outs yourself, then you can look at what people are swapping out. Often there's, a few card variations between lists.
Yeah. I've had decks like that where I couldn't get it. I had to try a few different versions, and then one of them just kind of hit me, and then I got it, right? But sometimes it's like you've got a couple of suboptimal cards in the deck, and that's just keeping your win rate, suppressed a little bit, which makes it hard to have fun with it. And then another version of the list comes along that just like cuts something bad or puts something better in, and all of a sudden, okay, well now I get it. Now I can start actually paying attention to learn with it.
And Yeah, we've been mentioning it a lot, but step 3, review your replays, right? That HS Replay allows you to view replays. I'm pretty sure even if you don't have a paid membership,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, you don't need to pay for that. Like that's
Firestone as well.
something that's just comes with running Deck Tracker. You can see your own replays. You don't get any of the stats that go along with it, but you can see the replays of the games that you played.
Yeah, so always good to go back, look at things you could have done differently or synergies you perhaps missed. If you're unsure, ask other players to look them over for you. We have a Discord channel of replays, right? Just post in there. Say like, hey, can someone help me out? Usually someone will see it, maybe not right away, but at some point, and take a look, put some feedback. I feel like it's always nice to post them somewhere where there's a bunch of people, so you can go either get differing opinions or just you're more likely to get a response sooner, right? And it's always good to have a fresh set of eyes.
Yeah, I mean, I like back when I was on a THL team with Ridiculous Hat, like we would do this a lot, and like this, I mean, you can imagine what a team with me and him would be like in terms of like over analyzing everything. But like there were games where we just posted like, could I have won here? And then the rest of the group would go through like turn by turn, like you could have done this better, you could have done this differently. If you did this, then you would have had this available, then you wouldn't have used this too early, and so forth. And like it's hard to see that sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes like looking at your own replays will get you so far, but if you don't know that there's a mistake that you're making, then it's not, you can't really correct it. And that's something that somebody else with that experience can see and then can point out to you. And once you see that, then it can kind of change your outlook on it. So it is always good to take VODs or take replays and ask other people to look at them if you're really feeling stuck and say like, what am I doing wrong? I will add to that. Make sure you're not salty when you're doing that, because you need to actually be able to listen to the feedback. And if you're tilted, you're not going to be able to listen to that. So, kind of if you're tilted, take a break before you solicit that feedback, because it's also very easy to say, oh, well, that wouldn't have mattered, and you're just being critical or whatever, right? Like, so make sure that you're in a position where you are willing to accept feedback and use it as improvement, which usually means wait till the tilt's worn off before you go there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then if you are feeling shy or just need another place to look, struggling with a particular matchup, again, this feels like a sponsored segment for HS Replay, but
it does.
It's really not.
We'll have another episode where I complain about them for 45 minutes to balance it out, I guess. But
yeah. You can use the VODs page on HS Replay, right? So where you can go back and check VODs people playing particular matchups, and there's just lots and lots of useful tools there, even if sometimes there's more data that confuses things.
Yeah, but I mean, you also don't need to be a paying member of HS Replay to get that. Like that's something that anybody can access from a Dex page, right?
Yes.
So like you can go into that, and then you can actually filter it by the deck that is being played. Well, I mean, it's always going to be the deck that's being played, against what deck or what archetype or what class they're playing against, and also whether it was a win or a loss, right? So if there's something where you don't know how another deck is going to beat you because you haven't seen it happen yet, you can see that, or you could see how you could beat a matchup that is either unfavored or is favored, but you're not winning it, right? That's really a good way to go in. You can find somebody, and it's going to be a crapshoot. Is it going to be in English? Is it going to be somebody who actually talks through their plays? Not everybody does, but if you can get that and then get like one or two good examples where not everything's going right necessarily, like sometimes, you just high roll. That's the answer. Just get good. Right. But, but sometimes you get somebody who just like, okay, this is how you play the matchup. I wouldn't have thought about holding that card in the mulligan for this matchup. I wouldn't have thought about using this card in that situation like they did. And that'll kind of give you a clue to do that. The other thing you can do is, if it's a deck that's popular enough, you could play the other side of it and then see how they beat you. That's also a way that you can do it. That takes longer than just watching a VOD of somebody who's playing the deck.
Well, particularly because often you are then playing another new deck. But
yes.
I mean, not always. I will always remember, though, post Ike made with the old good shaman that was like people calling this deck bad and then keeping Firefly against Warrior. Right?
Yeah.
Which was just to say, like, yes, having a 1-drop can be good, but it doesn't provide enough value against a control deck compared to other sort of more important cards for that deck. And that's the kind of thing where it'd be like, it's an easy to mistake to just assume, I want to have a 1-drop, right? Curve good. And then kind of the opposite of that. Sometimes you'll have a deck that, is a combo or control deck and usually plays slower, but there's one matchup where it's just like, that's not going to work. And so you are just like, play anything on curve, just curve out. And if they don't have it, maybe I kill them, right? There's those kinds of matchups too, where it can be counterintuitive.
Yeah. I mean, just watching other people play the deck anyway is going to help you just get more information, right? Now, again, play the video game, right?
Yeah.
Like if you are spending all of your time researching and you're not spending your, at least an equivalent amount of time playing, then you're not going to get better because you can get into analysis paralysis on a lot of the stuff. So make sure you're playing the video game. But if you're not at a point, or you're like, let's say you're tired and you're not necessarily at a point where you're making good decisions, or you're tilted, or you're just like warming up, you don't really have enough time to play a bunch of games, but you want to just like, you were having trouble, so you want to try to catch a VOD to see what they're doing. Like, that's a good way to use that time.
Yeah. Well, I think unless you got anything else to add, that'll about do it.
No. Do it in a way that hopefully you tank your rank less than we have. And
yeah.
And maybe we'll listen to our own advice for once, and maybe that'll help us get out of the slumps that we're in. But that happens too, right? Like, that's just variance. And like, I'm not really worried about it. Like, I could probably jam a bunch of games at the end of the, this week and get back there, or I don't, and I'll just get those back next month. It's fine.
It just gives me more excuse to play Hades too.
Yeah. There you go.
Oh boy. Well, shorter episode this week, both from not a ton going on and, just the two of us. But we have many folks we'd like to thank. Check out our thanks section on the website at Concede.com, where you can also find our contact info, our show notes, and our Patreon information. You can monetarily support our show at patreon.com/CoinConcede. Join us every week live by following us on Twitch at twitch.coinconcede.com. Join our community chats in our Discord at discord.coinconcede.com. And write into our email at coinconcede@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at CoinConcede, as well as like, share, and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/CoinConcede. And if you would like some CC swag, head on over to our shop at coinconcede.creator-spring.com. That's going to take some getting used to.
We're working on fixing that. I need to get into the hosting thing to fix the URL. But also, we should point out that we have been, and by we, I mean Magesa, has been working on a Unity Precision Perfection shirt in the style of Live, Laugh, Love.
Mm-hmm.
So if that is something that you're interested in, that should be up on the shop very soon. Also, we also have our Pride line of the Coin Concede logo that if you order it now, you should be able to get it in time for Pride next month, hopefully, or maybe part of Pride, depending on how long they take to ship. But you can go ahead and order that now and get that for Pride as well.
I guess it depends which week in June your Pride is as well. But
yes, that too. Yes.
Yeah.
I guess, it will be there. It will probably be there for some part of the month, whether it's there for the parade or not is a discussion.
Yeah. And beyond that, big thanks to our producers, Number Theory, Crash Beef, Squatch, David P., Walu, Jeremy T., Battle Cops, Grumpy Monk, The Burger Club, Kirk Regan, Forgiven One, Grizzly Bear, and Tyler Knife. Coin Concedes.
Well, first of all, I mean, I think we'll both coin concede to Magesa and hope that she gets better quickly. It sounds like she's on the mend, but also just not pushing herself, which is smart. So hope that she gets better quickly and that she can be back with us next week, because as nice as this is to get just the two of us, also we miss her. So hopefully she'll be back with us next week. I'm also going to coin concede to Tito Santana and Doc McButt, who had me on their Bread and Butter podcast last week. And if you are also it's kind of a slight continuation of this discussion, but a little bit more generic in terms of how do you stop making stupid mistakes. So we talked about stupid mistakes that we make and are and either have fixed or are trying to fix or still make when our ADHD meds have run out. I'm talking about me. Because that's usually the last hour. The first 2 hours of my stream is doing the right things, and then the last hour of my stream is doing all the wrong things because my ADHD meds have run out. But I know a bunch of people have said that they've appreciated that episode, so you can go check that out on their podcast.
Yeah, and besides just the we wish her well thing, I'm going to concede to Magesa for taking the initiative and working on that merch stuff. It's something that I just haven't had the energy to do. And it's there are so many times where it has been really nice to just have a third host who's able to take the initiative on things that we are too tired to tackle.
As they say on Letterkenny, more hands means less work.
So. Yeah. And then I'm going to concede to my housemate. I live in a duplex with friends, Ted, who assisted me in purchasing a cargo bike, an electric cargo bike.
Oh, you've been talking about that for a while.
Yeah, we're finally making the plunge now that it's getting hot. And I don't know how long it's going to take to arrive, but I placed the order. And because we're going to be, sharing it a bit, they're also kicking in for some of it. And we got, honestly, a faster one than I would have gotten because of that. It's exciting. It's funny. We ended up getting from the brand that I was interested in initially, not knowing anything, just feels, right? Like I had ridden one at a place in Ann Arbor, Human Electric Hybrids. And I was like, this feels good. This feels like a bike, even though it's a, electric cargo bike. And we didn't get that model because we're trying to be able to fit 2 kids on the back of it. But we got, one of their bigger models. And I didn't expect that because I thought he would, be convincing me to do one of these other brands that he's more familiar with. But he looked at the specs, and he used to work as like a call me wherever I am and I'll come fix your bike kind of bike mechanic.
Yeah.
Being a small business owner was not for him, but he knows his stuff, right? He also worked in a bike shop for a while. So really appreciate him being able to like tell me what was what in terms of builds for electric cargo bike. I'm excited to like not be putting Leah in and out of a car all the time.
Oh yeah.
Like it'll still be a kid seat type thing, but biking is so much more interesting than staring at the back of a car seat. I've got to imagine.
Yeah. I mean, imagine having to do that twice every time that you're getting in and out of the car. And
no fun.
Yeah, and having to clamber in the back of a minivan to do it. And yeah, your back will thank you, I'm sure. So it's always good to have somebody who like knows their stuff to make you feel a little bit more confident about a purchase like that. Cause like, that's the kind of thing that can just go wrong. And if you don't know what you're doing, and just like having somebody who actually knows what they're doing to say like, no, you should do this, don't do this. Or no, you're on the right track. Like that's huge when you're making a purchase like that.
Yeah. And most of the places I go are within a couple miles, right? No highway involved because I live in a streetcar suburb. Not that we have any streetcars anymore, but it's just what it's called. So yeah, looking forward to doing all the grocery shopping, going visiting family, all that stuff, just in the bike.
Yeah. And then eventually you'll get to the minivan, but that you got time for that.
Eventually. The Yaris needs to die first, our shared Yaris. And I don't know, that thing might live forever.
Sounds like and if you're not careful, you end up with Yaris Revenge. So that's a very old video game reference that I expect nobody to get. But I guess on that note, that'll do it for us for this week. So until next time, keep calm and look at the damn list. And if you see us on ladder, coin concede.
Coin concede.
All life must end. I yield for now. I concede. Well fought. I concede.
You win this one.
The victory is yours.
You have bested me.
I give up.
You win this one, friend. You win this time. I choose death.